Your nightly news with Louise Hubar begins now.
Good evening, everyone. First tonight, a commission of inquiry will be launched to shine a light on child sex abuse in Tasmanian government institutions. To discuss the developments, we're joined live now by reporter Sean McComish. Good evening, Sean. Just how significant is this move?
Well, good evening, Lou. It's been 20 years since a commission of inquiry has been held in Tasmania, and that was in the year 2000 over a fatal police shooting. Now, in recent weeks, Labor, the Greens and unions have all been calling for the government to launch a commission with 3 separate inquiries into child sex abuse adding up. Now, today, the Premier announced that he would finally take that dramatic step as even more cases come to light. Tasmania's terrible toll of child sex abuse climbs higher.
This situation is nothing short of terrible and we must take further action.
The Premier revealing 2 more historical cases before a budget committee. A teacher from the state's north has been stood down and charged, while a mental health worker has also been stood down pending an investigation.
I'm concerned that as the number of allegations coming to light continues to grow, we must take every step necessary to ensure we identify any systemic gaps and put in place measures to fill them.
3 separate inquiries are already looking into historical abuse, including allegations at the Ashley Youth Detention Centre, the Health Department with a specific focus on former nurse James Griffin, and Tasmania's education system. Now a commission of inquiry will examine every agency and department.
One of the key reasons I've come to the decision to recommend the establishment of a commission of inquiry is the power of that inquiry to compel witnesses to provide evidence.
Tasmania's equivalent of a royal commission, it's expected to begin early next year and run for 12 months. A move welcomed by Labor and the Greens.
This is well overdue and very important, particularly for all those survivors who are brave enough to speak out. Today's announcement of a commission of inquiry is a victory for those survivors.
What we're seeing and hearing now, as horrific as it is, potentially is only scratching the surface of a much deeper wound.
There's a warning Tasmanians will need to brace themselves for difficult days ahead.
I think at the end of the day there are hundreds and hundreds of people who have been affected by this over the years, and we really need to be prepared to see some quite shocking numbers come forward.
We need to be ready to hear what is the ugly truth around what has occurred across institutional settings in Tasmania.
The case of alleged pedophile nurse James Griffin also dominated the day. 3 of his former patients have been identified in exploitation material. The number of colleague complaints also revealed.
We are aware of 9 complaints or alleged incidents that were raised by colleagues over the course of Mr Griffin's 27 years with the THS.
A heated hearing also saw pressure on the Health Minister.
Minister, do you accept that people do not have confidence in the ability of this government, and in particular you as Minister, to fully respond appropriately to this matter?
No, I do not. I reject that absolutely.
The painful task of uncovering a dark past is only just beginning. Sean McComish, 7 Tasmania News.
And if you or anyone you know needs help or this story causes distress, you can contact the Sexual Assault Support Service on 1800 697 877. 2 youths have been charged over the Cosgrove High School blaze. A classroom block was destroyed in the fire on Saturday night, causing around $2 million worth of damage. Detectives have charged a 15-year-old man and a 17-year-old woman with arson. The school will remain closed until at least Wednesday. 3 people have been charged after Tasmania Police allegedly uncovered cannabis oil-infused gummy bears concealed in packages at the Burnie Mail Centre. Officers raided an Acton home late last week and allegedly found a large amount of cannabis and almost 50 cannabis plants, as well as more illegal gummy bears. A 47-year-old woman, a 23-year-old man and a 19-year-old man, all from Acton, have been charged with a range of drug offences. More than 50,000 fish have escaped from a pen at Huon Aquaculture in the Channel south of Hobart. The salmon giant confirmed a fire broke out in the early hours of this morning, melting infrastructure above and below the waterline, allowing the fish to escape. It says it's baffled by the cause of the blaze, with investigations still underway. Tasmanians are being warned about the dangers of shopping online, with several locals being scammed buying cars recently. Police say since early last month, a number of residents have reported losing hundreds of dollars after believing they were buying legitimate vehicles advertised on social media and on buy and sell pages. More than $100,000 has been lost to those recent scams. Police say it's important to inspect the vehicle in person first, and if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. COVID restrictions on some South Australian travellers have been eased by the state government. Public Health says those who arrived from SA before 5:30 p.m. on November 16 no longer have to self-isolate unless they are waiting on a COVID test result. But those who arrived after that time must remain in quarantine for 14 days from the day they arrived. Public Health says it's continuing to review the situation and will provide further advice in the coming days. A date has been set for the first Mercy flights to touch down in Hobart after they were initially delayed. The Premier told a parliamentary inquiry the first travellers from India to Tasmania will now land on December 6. Flights were initially scheduled for the end of November but will push back now the government says it's confident it has the procedures in place to keep travellers and Tasmanians safe.
We want to run the absolutely very best international quarantine hotel that we can, drawing from the learnings that have occurred elsewhere.
The government is still working with the Commonwealth to ensure all security arrangements are in place. A Tasmanian zoo is working to become more accessible for people with disabilities. Students from the Southern Support School have road tested a new program at Zoodoo, encouraging them to interact with some of their friendlier residents.
Not your average day at the zoo. These students from the Southern Support School treated to a safari.
I think so far driving through the emus and the camels was a real highlight for our students.
The animals at Zoodoo equally as interested in their visitors.
Now we're just having a look around the barnyard area, and they are going to go down to the native park soon to check out the Australian native animals.
It's all part of an initiative to make the zoo more inclusive. Working closely with the school and Variety to support people with a disability to access the park.
Our core purpose is to make sure that children don't miss out, because the opportunities for them is not equal.
Today, the first test.
I want to see a chicken. You want to go see the chicken? Come on then.
These audio buttons and visual communication charts scattered throughout the zoo.
A lot of them know the visual charts very well, and we can communicate really easily to them. They get quite excited when they see us also holding the visual charts as well.
Well, we worked really hard with Variety and Zoodoo to make sure there was a lot of planning involved to make sure that all of the park was accessible for all of us.
The experience deemed a success.
It's been a fantastic day. They've all really enjoyed themselves and had a wonderful time.
Hoping it will be the first of many to come. Meg Sides, 7 Tasmania News.
Tasmanian aviation groups have taken part in sky-high celebrations recognising the 90th anniversary of the first flight jetting off the runway in Launceston. The 1930 flight marked the beginning of commercial aviation in the state.
An historic trip to the skies, remembered 9 decades later. The 23rd of November 1930 saw the first flight take off from Launceston's airport runway. The Tasmanian Aero Club and the Aviation Historical Society gathering to celebrate the anniversary.
Well, the club was formed originally in 1927 and it was commissioned by the federal government to find a landing field in northern Tasmania to conduct these operations from. It did so. It became Launceston Airport.
Flying in those days was a different beast.
They had very few instruments. They were pretty much flying at maybe 2,000 feet and looking at the land and really navigating via line of sight.
Some of those attending have a personal connection to the men that started the Aero Club.
Captain Francis was the pilot, and Stubbs the engineer, and then the other pilot was my grandfather, Laurie Johnson.
That plane is still taking to the skies.
Yeah, it's been restored, and it's flying in Queensland.
And they've been told it could make a special appearance in Tasmania for the 100th anniversary. Josh Duggan, 7 Tasmania News.
Tasmania's state service needs to undergo a significant transformation if it's to keep up with future demand, according to a new report. Interim findings into a review of the sector recommend government departments work together to tackle complex issues. But the community and public sector union says the report lacks depth, concerned the timeframe is now too short to allow for community consultation. The final report is due to be handed down in March. Tasmanian businesses forced to move online throughout the pandemic have received a boost to their digital training. A long-running program dedicated to online support for business has proven more popular than ever this year, with visits to its website increasing by 7 times as struggling owners adapted to coronavirus shutdowns.
I knew that weddings would always happen though. They just would look differently. So I wanted to create something that I could move away from a service-based model to a product-based model.
We can support more businesses to pivot, to maybe do some change to the way their business operates, but to get advantage of the e-commerce market, which is not just local, it's not just Australian, it's global.
Extra funding for the program included an additional 50 how-to guides and a doubling of one-on-one coaching sessions. As the Sydney Hobart Yacht Race nears, entrants are undergoing final preparations. With the addition of a two-handed division in the open water race this year, it's following a growing trend in the sport.
A 7-time entrant in the Sydney Hobart Yacht Race, Charlie's Dream is an expert at this by now.
We wanted a boat that was safe. So if the proverbial hit the fan and the weather turned nasty, we'd be confident that the boat was going to carry us through.
The boat holds special meaning for its owner.
We decided to name it after my father-in-law, and I guess it's many people's dream to be out there on the water.
Competing in the first running of a two-handed division in the race, they'll be in for some extra work.
I think it's the challenge. Apart from being the inaugural, I feel very comfortable on our boat doing two-handed.
But it's got some pluses too.
Certainly from an owner's point of view, it's a lot easier organising one other crew than it is to organise 8 other crew.
Enthusiasm for that side of the sport is growing.
Two-handed racing is becoming very popular globally. It's a matter of us staying contemporary with what the yachting fraternity are keen to do.
The number of entries in the race have pleased organisers, with a strong Tasmanian contingent starting the race.
So to have 6 Tasmanian boats, 2 of whom have actually won the race before, Midnight Rambler and Alive, is terrific, and I think there'll be a lot of interest from the local yachting fraternity for this year's race.
All eyes will be on the starting cannon when it fires on Boxing Day. Josh Duggan, 7 Tasmania News.
North Launceston is unlikely to field a side in next year's TSLW competition. The team only competed in the Elite State League for 2 seasons. It leaves only 4 teams in the women's competition, with Launceston the only northern side. AFL Tasmania says it's working through what the TSLW will look like next year. The Tasmanian Amateur Golf Championships has wrapped up with an interstate visitor taking out the men's event. Queenslander Lewis Dobbelaar finished with a score of 10 under par, doing his best to tame Mowbray Golf Club's course, having flown to Tasmania for the event.
Just the limited schedule this year. I mean, there's been nothing really on, most of the year. So to get an event back, up and running by Mowbray and Golf Tasmania, it's been, wouldn't want to miss it.
This is one of the biggest tournaments of the year, so it's great that we can come out and play under the circumstances. So yeah, it feels really good to win.
17-year-old Mackenzie Wilson from Tasmania Golf Club won the women's event, having led at the end of all 4 rounds. Hobart has secured 2 more BBL games this summer at Blunston Arena. Cricket Australia has added a match between the Hobart Hurricanes and Melbourne Stars on January 2 and 4. The first clash will see the Canes face the Sydney Sixers at Blunston under lights on December 10. A total of 10 matches will be played in Tasmania this season, including 2 in Launceston. Meanwhile, a big bash frenzy is coming to Melbourne for a blockbuster finish to the BBL season. The MCG and Marvel Stadium will host 11 games in 13 days from mid-January, including 2 Melbourne derbies in the same week. The G will host an historic double-header on Australia Day, with the Renegades taking on the Hurricanes before the Stars and the Sixers close out the regular season.
Good evening. Launceston reached a high of 26 today, Burnie 22, 20 at Devonport, Hobart 17. 27 was the state's top at Ouse, Strawn and Liawini reaching 20 and 19 across Flinders Island and Lowhead. On the close-up shows cloud across the state during the morning with the high cloud clearing from the north in the afternoon. Further out, cloud and thunderstorms associated with a low-pressure system and troughs can be seen extending from the northern WA to the Tasman Sea. Tomorrow the ridge will move slightly north of Tasmania as the cold front approaches the state. Southwest to northwesterly winds tomorrow 10 to 20 knots, swells up to 2 metres in the west and south and below 1 metre in the north. A strong wind warning is current for southwestern coastal waters from southeast Cape to Low Rocky Point. Tomorrow's forecast now: Hobart 21, cloudy across Adventure Bay and Tarraleah. In the north, showers clearing in Launceston, Devonport 20, 18 at Bridport. Burnie tomorrow, a possible early shower, 17 across Strawn and Marrawar. St Helens and Swansea expecting a shower or 2, Whitemark 19. The UV forecast is very high across the state with the sun setting at 8:22 p.m. Looking ahead to the 3-day forecast: Wednesday, fine apart from light showers about the west. Thursday, showers about the west and far south, clearing by the evening. And Friday, light showers about the north and developing about the west in the afternoon. Capital cities 33 and sunny in Perth tomorrow. Melbourne partly cloudy and Darwin expecting a shower or 2. And currently Hobart cloudy and 16, Launceston 19 and Devonport cloudy and 18. That's all for weather tonight.
Looks like a great spring week. Thanks, Jackie. And before we leave you tonight, a fisherman in Long Island has stumbled across a deer with a paint tin stuck on its head. After several attempts to free the animal, rescue crews were brought in to remove the bucket. The deer bounded away into the forest and didn't appear to be hurt. The video has been posted online to remind people to clean up their rubbish. And that's all your news for this Monday evening. Thanks for joining us. Kim will be back with you tomorrow night. Have a lovely evening. Good night.